You are rubbing your bald head in the war room, thinking, brainstorming, contemplating what WMMA fight you can slap on that main event to put on a show for the fans on a mediocre card. You think about putting on a fight between two smoke shows. You quickly remember that this card does not deserve that. Then, you are quick to remember you can do the complete opposite. Put on a masculine lesbian showdown. Who is the toughest Brazilian lesbian in the UFC? Is it Virna Jandiroba or Amanda Lemos? You think that this is perfect. You can't be called a misogynist because you're putting women on back-to-back main cards as main events. Plus, as an added bonus, you get to see them smooch in the back. You are Dana White, and this is the Casual's Guide to Amanda Lemos versus Virna Jandiroba. Amanda Lemos is past her physical prime, being 37 years old, but she still has some fight left in her. Plus, she is experienced in the octagon. She stands short at 5'4". Lemos jumped right into the deep end with her first MMA fight being professional. She made her pro debut back in 2014 when she went up against Laura Falcao, and she steamrolled her by knocking her out in the first round just 4 minutes in. Then she went up against Alice Correa Costa, and Lemos obliterated her, knocking her out in just the first round, 4 minutes in. She did the same in her next two fights, making short work of them via knockout. Lemos got bored of knocking out her opponents, and when she fought Carolina Cunha, Lemos decided to sync up a nasty guillotine choke and force the tap in just 2 minutes into the first round. Lemos' next fight would be against Mayra Cantuera, and this fight would be a draw. It was also her first fight to go past the first round. It was also a good fight that tested her cardio and her heart. So naturally they had a rematch, and Lemos would prove herself the better fighter when she landed a devastating knee that left Mayra unable to continue. This rivalry had enough hype behind it to get the UFC's attention, so they decided to sign Lemos to the promotion. And in her UFC debut, she was going to fight Leslie Smith, and this is where her 6-fight win streak ended, when Leslie Smith would get a technical knockout over Lemos. But Lemos was undeniable, and she would put on an impressive performance against Miranda Granger, and Lemos would sink in a nasty submission and get the tap just 4 minutes into the very first round with a rear naked choke. Then Lemos was set to fight Mizuki Inoue, and she would go on to win this fight by unanimous decision. This fight proved that she was more than just a finisher, and that she could go the distance and look good doing it. So the UFC had Lemos fight Montserrat Ruiz, and she would get her quickest finish to date by knocking out Ruiz just 35 seconds into the very first round. This fight put Lemos on the map. She was one of few fighters at strawweight that had punching power and great jiu-jitsu. So the UFC made her jump up in competition, and they matched Lemos up with Angela Overkill Hill. This fight was a banger. However, Lemos would get the split decision win over Hill after a hard-fought fight. After she proved she could beat a top 15 opponent, the promotion would set her up to fight a WMMA legend, Jessica Andrade. But Lemos was on the wrong end of a submission, and Lemos got choked out in the first round just 3 minutes in with a rear naked choke. So naturally, she took a step down in competition and she fought Michelle Watterson. And Lemos would shine bright once again, getting the guillotine submission in the second round. Lemos would go on to face Marina Rodriguez, and she would get the knockout in the third round, less than a minute into the round. After beating two prospects, the UFC gave her another legend in the sport, Weili Zhang. And this is Lemos' first fight that went all 5 rounds. However, Lemos was on the wrong end of a decision and lost the fight. And that brings us to her last fight against the heartthrob Mackenzie Dern. And Lemos would derail the Dern train by beating Dern by decision. Now she is up against a great prospect in Virna Jandiroba. Overall, Lemos has 14 wins, 3 losses, 8 wins by knockout, 3 submission wins, and 3 decision wins. Her losses have been 1 by knockout, 1 by submission, and 1 decision loss. So she does have a good record, but when she fights the women at the top of the division, she couldn't get the job done. Now we will look at her opponent, Virna Jandiroba. Virna Jandiroba is 1 year younger than Lemos. She currently trains out of Fight House and stands 1 inch shorter than Lemos, being 5 foot 3 inches. Similar to Lemos, Virna wasted no time in the MMA scene by jumping into the pros, making her official professional debut in the PFL when she fought Joanna Seneda and ran through her by choking her unconscious with a rear naked choke in the first round just 41 seconds in. Virna didn't have wins over any big names, but she did remain undefeated, with her record standing at 14-0, with 11 of those fights ending in a submission, and 3 of those wins were decisions. After her last win in Invicta, she finally got her chance in the big leagues when she would fight Carla Esparza in 2019. However, the future champion would prove to be too much for Virna because she ended her great win streak by losing to Esparza by unanimous decision. But Virna would jump right back on track when she fought Mallory Martin and finished her with a rear naked choke in the second round just 1 minute in. This put a lot of confidence back into Virna because she proved to herself that she can hang in the UFC. Then she would fight another well-known veteran, Felice Herrig. Virna would make a very short work of Herrig after sinking in a devastating armbar just 1 minute and 45 seconds into the very first round. This gave the fans quite a bit of hype because she obviously is a finisher in a division where finishes are pretty rare. So the UFC made Heartthrob in Mackenzie Dern versus Jandiroba, but Dern proved to be more than a pretty face when she beat Virna by unanimous decision. So after taking her second loss in her career, she took a step down in competition when the UFC would match up Virna with Kaneko Murata. And Virna was dominating the fight until Murata would injure her arm in between rounds 2 and 3. The reason she hurt her arm is because Virna had a very tight armbar and Murata did not tap. So they awarded Virna with a TKO finish, the only knockout in her career. After the dominating performance over Murata, the UFC would match her up with popular fighter Amanda Lemos. Unfortunately, the momentum would end here because Lemos would beat Virna by decision. But that is far from the end, because Virna was to fight Angela Hill, and Virna would dominate Hill in this fight, winning by unanimous decision. Then, Virna would get a matchup with a good prospect in Marina Rodriguez. Virna would dominate this fight, chasing the submission, however, she never got it. So naturally, Virna would win this by unanimous decision. Then in her most recent fight, she would get matched up with another popular fighter and pretty good prospect in Lupita Godinez, also known as Lupi. And Virna would derail the hype train in dominating fashion, winning by unanimous decision once again. If you were paying attention, this leaves Virna Jandiroba's record at 20 wins and 3 losses. She has 1 TKO win, 13 submission wins, and 6 decision wins. 3 of those decision wins would be in her last 3 fights, and all of her losses were by decision. It's hard to say Virna isn't a legit prospect. The only downside to her stock is that she is 36 years old, but again, she has never been finished, and most of her fights have ended before the 3rd round, so realistically, she could fight well into her 40s. Overall, I'm picking Jandiroba to win. She has had more experience, plus she has the momentum on her side, winning her last 3 fights. But Lemos could get the win on paper. Because on paper she has beaten Dern by decision and Virna lost to her. But MMA math doesn't work like that. And to back up my prediction, Lemos has been submitted before and knocked out before. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Virna syncs up a submission in the 1st or 2nd round. But Lemos' path to victory is definitely to keep the fight on the feet and push it to the decision, because Virna has never been finished and her only losses have been by decision. So that's why I feel Virna will get the job done here. If you watched the video this far, be sure to like and subscribe, as that is the only way to support the channel. And I hope you guys enjoy the fights and have a great week. Bye.